Charm is a powerful thing. It can be magnetic, drawing people in, making them feel seen, valued, and understood. When we encounter someone with an engaging, charismatic personality, it's easy to be swept up in the warmth of their presence. But what happens when this charm starts to feel a little too perfect, a little too rehearsed? Psychopaths often wear a mask of charm, using their likable demeanor to lure us in. The key is that it's not an authentic connection they're offering. It's a performance. Their goal is not to create meaningful long-term relationships, but to manipulate and control. This mask is crafted with precision, and it's often so convincing that even the most discerning individuals can be taken in. Psychopaths understand human psychology deeply, and they know how to play on our emotions, creating a sense of comfort and safety. They will give us just enough warmth, just enough attention to make us feel like we've found someone who truly understands us. The problem arises when this facade begins to crumble and we start to feel confused or unsettled, wondering why, despite their charm, something still doesn't sit right. Charm, in this case, becomes a tool for deception. Over time, this charm isn't just a social tool, it becomes a weapon. It's used to create a sense of false intimacy, drawing us closer so they can more easily influence our decisions and actions. They will make us feel special, unique, or even as if we share a secret bond. But behind this mask, the true intentions are far less innocent. A psychopath will often use their charm to manipulate, to coerce, or to exploit vulnerabilities for personal gain. It's a subtle erosion of our own sense of agency and trust, all while they remain the center of attention, enjoying the power that their charisma gives them. This is where the danger lies. Charm becomes the Trojan horse that allows the psychopath to invade our space, to take up more room in our emotional world than they ever deserve. We might not notice it at first, as their charm initially feels refreshing, like a breath of fresh air. But charm can easily morph into something darker when used strategically to exploit our emotions and our sense of safety. Recognizing this dynamic requires us to be attuned to our own sense of discomfort. If something feels too perfect, too easy, or too flattering, it's time to pause and evaluate whether we're seeing the real person or just the performance. A challenge in recognizing this mask of charm is that it doesn't show up in a way that's obvious. Psychopaths are often incredibly adept at reading people and tailoring their behavior to what will make others most comfortable. This ability to blend in so seamlessly can make it almost impossible to spot the warning signs right away. However, the key lies in observing patterns over time. If someone's charm always feels transactional, if they always seem to be positioning themselves in a way that leaves them in control, it's worth considering that what you're seeing isn't genuine warmth, but a calculated strategy to gain power and influence. Recognizing this early is the first step in protecting ourselves from the dangers that lie beneath the surface of a charming persona. Empathy is the invisible thread that binds human beings together. It allows us to connect, to understand each other's experiences, to offer support and compassion in moments of need. It's the foundation of all healthy relationships, whether they be personal or professional. When someone is genuinely empathetic, they can put themselves in your shoes, understand your pain, joy, and struggles, and respond with care. But when you're dealing with a psychopath, this thread is missing. The absence of empathy isn't just a lack of emotional response. It's a deep, unsettling void that leaves those around them feeling disconnected, unseen, and unheard. Psychopaths, by nature, are unable to truly experience or understand the emotions of others. Their inability to feel empathy means they cannot comprehend the emotional impact of their actions on those around them. This can manifest in numerous ways. For example, they may lie, cheat, or manipulate without hesitation, not because they're necessarily malicious, but because they have no emotional attachment to the consequences of their actions. The people they harm are seen not as individuals with their own feelings and needs, but as objects to be used for personal gain. To them, relationships are transactional, not emotional. What makes the absence of empathy so dangerous is that it often goes unnoticed, especially at the beginning of a relationship. Psychopaths are skilled at mimicking empathy, at saying the right words in the right moments to make us believe they care. They can pretend to understand our struggles, offer comforting words, and even appear sympathetic, but these gestures are hollow. The difference is that real empathy is based on a genuine emotional connection. Whereas the psychopath's words and actions are often calculated, designed to create an illusion of care without any real emotional investment. Over time, this lack of genuine empathy can cause profound damage to our sense of trust and emotional well-being. Without empathy, psychopaths are unable to experience guilt or remorse, even when they hurt others. This can be incredibly disorienting for those around them. When we feel wronged by someone, we naturally expect some form of accountability and acknowledgement of the hurt caused. With a psychopath, this never happens. Instead, their responses may range from indifference to gaslighting, making us question our own reality and emotions. The inability to recognize or care about the harm they've caused not only deepens the emotional wound, but also leaves the victim feeling isolated, unsure of who they can trust or rely on. This emotional disconnection creates a profound imbalance in the relationship, where one person remains vulnerable while the psychopath remains in control. In dealing with someone who lacks empathy, we begin to notice a sense of emotional exhaustion. Our attempts to connect or communicate are met with coldness or manipulation. We may find ourselves constantly questioning our feelings, doubting our experiences, or even apologizing for things that we have no reason to apologize for. It can feel like a constant game of emotional tug of war, with a psychopath pulling us in one direction and leaving us in a state of emotional disarray. In the absence of empathy, they become a master at exploiting our vulnerabilities and undermining our emotional stability. Recognizing the absence of empathy is crucial. It's the first step in understanding the dynamics at play and protecting ourselves from being further dragged into an emotionally unhealthy situation. Empathy is what allows us to feel safe in our relationships. It's the comfort of knowing that someone else cares about our well-being, that they can feel with us in our joys and our sorrows. Without it, our relationship becomes a one-sided effort where only one person's needs, feelings, and desires matter. This is the quiet killer of connection. It chips away at our emotional security, leaving us feeling alone even when we are surrounded by others. If you sense the absence of empathy in someone, it's essential to listen to that inner warning signal. It's a sign that the relationship is not built on the mutual understanding and care that fosters trust and emotional safety. Trust your instincts and give yourself permission to step away from the relationship before you become too entangled in its web of emotional manipulation. Trust is the cornerstone of every healthy relationship, whether personal, professional, or even casual. It's the quiet understanding that when you share your thoughts and feelings with someone, they will treat them with care, respect, and integrity. Trust allows us to be vulnerable, to show up as our authentic selves, and to build meaningful connections. But when we're dealing with a psychopath, trust is slowly, insidiously, and deliberately eroded. The most alarming part of this is that it often happens so gradually that we might not even recognize it until we've already been deeply affected. Psychopaths by nature are expert manipulators, and one of their most powerful tools is the ability to say one thing while doing another. In the beginning, psychopaths can be incredibly charming and persuasive. They promise the world, telling you exactly what you want to hear, making you feel like they are the person you've been waiting for your whole life. Their words sound sincere and their promises feel solid. They know how to craft narratives that make us believe they are trustworthy, loyal, and aligned with our values. However, as time goes on, the actions start to diverge from the words. They might say they care, but their behavior doesn't align with that sentiment. They might promise to always be there for you, but when you need them most, they're nowhere to be found. The inconsistency between their words and actions is one of the most telling signs that you're dealing with someone who is not to be trusted. This misalignment between words and actions can be confusing, and it often triggers a cognitive dissonance within us. We want to believe that the person we're dealing with is trustworthy, especially when they've built such an image of dependability early on. But over time, their behavior reveals that this trust was misplaced. It's not that they are incapable of saying the right things. It's that they are masterful at manipulating us with promises and false assurances. Psychopaths are skilled at pretending to be someone they're not, and they can mimic the behaviors and language of trustworthy individuals. This is why it's so difficult to spot the red flags early on. They present themselves in a way that aligns with what we expect from a trustworthy person, but their actions slowly begin to expose their true intentions. One of the most damaging effects of this erosion of trust is that it doesn't just impact the individual relationship, it impacts our entire worldview. When someone repeatedly fails to live up to their promises, it can make us question the reliability of others around us. We begin to second guess the people we thought we could trust and become more guarded in future relationships. A psychopath's deliberate and calculated disregard for trust doesn't just break the bond with one person, it chips away at our broader capacity to engage with the world in an open and vulnerable way. This erosion of trust leaves emotional scars that may take years to heal, and in some cases, it can create lasting damage to one's ability to form genuine connections moving forward. The key to breaking free from this cycle is learning to recognize the signs of broken trust early on. It's essential to become hyper aware of discrepancies between what someone says and what they actually do. Words are easy to say, but actions speak far louder. If you notice a pattern where someone repeatedly says one thing and does another, where promises are made but never kept, where words of care are followed by actions that show indifference or cruelty, take it as a clear warning sign. It's not just a small issue to brush off. Trust is foundational, and when it begins to erode, it can destabilize everything around it. The painful truth is that once trust has been broken repeatedly, it's often very difficult, if not impossible, to rebuild. Protect yourself by honoring your gut feelings and choosing to distance yourself from those who cannot honor the commitments they make. You deserve relationships built on trust, consistency, and mutual respect, not ones where words are used as tools to manipulate and mislead. Ultimately, the erosion of trust by a psychopath is one of the most toxic dynamics to endure. It forces you to constantly question your own perception of reality, leaving you in a perpetual state of uncertainty. This is the very nature of manipulation, to make you doubt your own thoughts, feelings, and even memories. A relationship without trust is one where control and power dynamics are at play, and the person with the most control is the one who can expertly twist reality and manipulate the truth. Recognizing the signs of broken trust early and setting boundaries to protect yourself from further harm is crucial. Your peace of mind and emotional well-being are worth far more than the illusion of loyalty or connection someone else may try to sell you. Emotional exploitation is one of the most insidious tactics employed by psychopaths to gain power and control over others. At its core, emotional exploitation involves manipulating someone's feelings for personal gain, often without any regard for the other person's well-being. It's a calculated strategy that taps into our deepest vulnerabilities and uses our emotions against us. This manipulation can take many forms, from playing on our guilt, fear, or insecurities, to twisting our emotions in ways that make us doubt our own reality. Psychopaths are experts at emotional exploitation because they can read people with an almost uncanny accuracy, knowing exactly what buttons to push to achieve their desired outcome. The heart of emotional exploitation is a profound disregard for the other person's feelings. Unlike someone with genuine emotional intelligence who understands and respects the boundaries and emotions of others, a psychopath sees emotions as a tool, something to be used, twisted, and leveraged to maintain control. They will use your kindness, empathy, or vulnerability against you, taking advantage of your willingness to support them. They may create scenarios where you feel responsible for their well-being, or even make you believe that their happiness or success is directly tied to your actions. This dynamic can slowly erode your sense of self, as the psychopath's emotional needs are placed above your own, making you feel as though your emotions and desires are irrelevant or secondary. One of the most powerful tools in emotional exploitation is the tactic of guilt tripping. Psychopaths are adept at making others feel guilty for their own needs or desires. They will often play the victim, presenting themselves as the injured party, and turn your natural compassion and desire to help others into a weapon against you. For example, they might say things like, "If you really cared about me, you would do this for me," or "I don't know what I'd do without you." This type of emotional manipulation forces you into a position where your decisions are no longer about your own values and well-being. They become about placating the psychopath's needs and soothing their emotional demands. You may find yourself compromising your own values, making decisions that don't align with your true desires, all in an attempt to avoid their emotional backlash or guilt. Beyond guilt, psychopaths also use fear and intimidation to manipulate others emotionally. They may threaten to withdraw affection, escalate arguments, or even use subtle forms of violence or intimidation to ensure that you remain under their control. The goal is to create a power imbalance where the victim is constantly walking on eggshells, afraid that any misstep will result in emotional or psychological punishment. This fear is deeply destabilizing. It prevents you from acting freely and instead forces you to keep your focus on the psychopath's emotional state, always worrying about how to maintain their approval or avoid their wrath. The constant emotional turmoil can lead to feelings of confusion, self-doubt, and isolation as you become more and more preoccupied with your emotional needs while neglecting your own. The most dangerous aspect of emotional exploitation is how it creates a toxic cycle of dependence. Over time, the victim becomes emotionally dependent on the psychopath's validation and approval. The highs of receiving their praise or attention become addictive, and the lows caused by their emotional cruelty or neglect create a sense of instability. This up and down dynamic, often referred to as intermittent reinforcement, is a powerful tool for control. The unpredictability of the psychopath's emotional responses makes the victim crave the rare moments of affection or approval, even when they know deep down that these moments are insincere and fleeting. This emotional roller coaster can leave the victim feeling trapped, unsure of how to break free from the cycle of manipulation, and fearful that without the psychopath's approval, they will be left emotionally destitute. Recognizing emotional exploitation is a critical step in protecting yourself from further harm. The first sign is the gradual realization that your emotional needs are consistently disregarded or minimized. If you find yourself constantly giving to the other person, sacrificing your own happiness, values, and emotional well-being to keep them satisfied, you are likely being emotionally exploited. It's important to recognize this dynamic and set firm boundaries to protect your emotional integrity. Stop allowing someone else to dictate the terms of your emotional life and begin to prioritize your own needs and feelings. Emotional exploitation thrives when we allow others to manipulate us into giving up our own sense of self for their benefit. The moment you recognize it, you have the power to take back control and reestablish healthy boundaries, ensuring that your emotional world remains yours to navigate. The ability to set and maintain healthy boundaries is one of the most important skills we can develop to protect ourselves from toxic relationships, particularly when dealing with individuals who manipulate, exploit, or harm us. Boundaries are not walls meant to isolate us from others, but rather protective barriers that allow us to engage with the world on our own terms, ensuring our emotional, mental, and physical well-being. When it comes to psychopaths, setting boundaries is not just a matter of self-care. It's a crucial strategy for self-preservation. Psychopaths thrive in environments where there are no boundaries, where they can push limits, manipulate emotions, and exploit vulnerabilities without consequence. By learning to protect ourselves through clear and firm boundaries, we take back control and reclaim our personal power. At its core, setting boundaries means clearly defining what you will and will not tolerate in a relationship. This can apply to both behavior and emotional demands. It requires an honest evaluation of your own needs and values, as well as the courage to assert those needs, even when doing so may cause discomfort or conflict. Boundaries can be physical, e.g., respecting personal space, emotional, e.g., not tolerating manipulation or guilt tripping, or psychological, e.g., not allowing someone to question or undermine your reality. Psychopaths with their manipulative tendencies will constantly test these boundaries, seeing how far they can push you before you back down or give in. Without strong boundaries, you may find yourself constantly accommodating their needs while neglecting your own, leading to emotional exhaustion and confusion. One of the first steps in setting boundaries is learning to recognize when your boundaries are being violated. Psychopaths are often masters at pushing limits subtly and incrementally, so you may not even notice the erosion of your personal space until it's too late. You might find yourself constantly feeling uncomfortable, stressed, or emotionally drained by interactions with a particular person, but unsure of why. The key is to tune into these feelings of discomfort and pay attention to patterns of behavior that make you feel unsafe or disrespected. This might look like someone repeatedly breaking promises, invading your personal space, making demands on your time or energy without regard for your own needs, or making you feel guilty for asserting your rights. If you start to notice these behaviors, it's a sign that your boundaries are being compromised. Setting boundaries with a psychopath can feel daunting, especially when you are dealing with someone who may have trained you to doubt your own instincts or to tolerate behaviors that are clearly damaging. Psychopaths are skilled at creating emotional chaos and manipulating people into questioning themselves, so establishing boundaries with them requires confidence and self-awareness. This might mean having difficult conversations where you assert your needs, saying no without guilt, or even cutting off contact completely if necessary. It's important to remember that boundaries are not about controlling others, but about taking responsibility for your own emotional health and well-being. It's an act of self-respect. And in a toxic relationship, it's often the only way to break free from the cycle of manipulation. Once you've established your boundaries, it's crucial to consistently enforce them. Psychopaths will test these boundaries, often pushing back with manipulation, guilt trips, or emotional outbursts, trying to make you feel like you're being unreasonable or cruel. This is where the true strength of your boundaries lies. It's not enough to simply state your needs. You must be prepared to follow through with consequences when those boundaries are violated. This could mean distancing yourself emotionally, limiting contact, or cutting ties altogether if necessary. The more consistently you enforce your boundaries, the more you will reinforce your self-worth and your right to be treated with respect. Over time, the more empowered you become, the less power the psychopath will have over you. Finally, embracing boundaries as a shield doesn't just protect you from toxic individuals, it strengthens your sense of self and emotional resilience. Boundaries allow you to engage with others from a place of confidence, self-respect, and clarity. They create the emotional space needed for healthy, mutually respectful relationships to flourish. Psychopaths rely on your willingness to neglect your own needs, to constantly put others before yourself, and to tolerate behaviors that are damaging. By setting and maintaining clear boundaries, you draw a line in the sand, telling both yourself and others that you value your emotional health and will not allow anyone to cross that line. In doing so, you protect your heart, mind, and spirit from harm and take back control over your own life.